welcome to the Leonard Peikoff Show. A well-known teacher and author, Dr. Leonard Peikoff is Ayn Rand's chosen heir and the leading authority on her philosophy of objectivism, the philosophy she presented in her famous novels The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged. And now, here's Leonard Peikoff.
Today our show is called Bureaucrats versus Your Doctor's Brain. I've had quite a number of shows, I think maybe more on the topic of socialized medicine and government interference with private medical practice than on any other subject. I think it's a really crucial subject. And believe it or not, I still have a lot more to say about it. I've been lecturing, writing, and talking about this subject for years, and there are still some points that I don't think are repetitive that I would like to share with you. We've talked about the rights of the doctors, why I don't think anyone has a right to health care. We've talked about the effects, to some extent, of government takeover of medicine on the patients. Today, I want to discuss the connection between these issues. Why violating the doctor's rights has to end up in wrecking the patients. This is not an issue only of motivation. It's not only the doctor doesn't make as much money under socialized medicine, so he doesn't try as hard. That's true. He has no financial motivation, but he literally cannot think or function effectively as a doctor under socialized medicine, under government control of medicine, even if he tries. That's the theme that I want to elaborate in the topic, Bureaucrats versus Your Doctor's Brain. I want to start by just saying that we have a pretty good medical system right now. It's still, with all the government intervention, the envy of the globe. If you look at the rich from every other country, when they get sick, they don't go to Moscow or Stockholm or even London. Not anymore. They come here. And despite all the public complaints against the medical profession, I think everybody knows this fact. We know how good our doctors are and how much we depend on their knowledge, skill, and dedication. Suppose you had to go on a 6-month ocean voyage. You couldn't stop in port. There was ample provisions and sailors, but only one other profession represented on board in addition, and you could decide which it would be. How many of you listening would ask for your lawyer to come along, your accountant, your congressman? Would you dare even to ask for your favorite movie star? Or would you say, bring a doctor, what if something happens? The terror of having no answer to this question is precisely what the medical profession saves us from. Now, I don't need a big disclaimer here. I am not saying that all doctors are perfect, that they don't make mistakes, that the profession is free from flaws, but none of that alters two facts, that our doctors, whatever their failings, do give us the highest caliber health care in world history, and that they live a grueling existence in order to do so. Now, I come from a medical family, and I know firsthand what a doctor's life is like. Most of them study nonstop for years in medical school, and then work nonstop for the rest of their life. My own father was a surgeon. He operated in the operating room daily from 7 a.m. until noon, and then he made hospital rounds. From 2 to 6 p.m. he held office hours. When he came home for dinner, if he did, the phone never stopped ringing. It was nurses asking instructions, or doctors discussing emergency cases, or patients with symptoms. And when he got the chance, usually late at night or on Sundays after rounds, because the rounds were 7 days a week, he would read medical journals or write for them to keep abreast of the latest research. Now, my father was not an exception. This is how most doctors in any branch of medicine live and how they work. And my key point for today's show is they not only have to live and work in such a pressure cooker, they have to think, T-H-I-N-K. They have to think all the time, clearly, objectively, scientifically. Medicine is a field that requires a vast fund of specialized theoretical knowledge. You get most of that, much of it, in medical school, but then they have to apply it properly to particular cases. And that means that a doctor has to continuously make delicate, excruciatingly complex decisions. Usually medical treatment is not a cut and dried affair. Just come in and say, oh, it's simple, self-evident, this is what to do. Usually it requires the balancing of countless variables. It requires what the doctors themselves call clinical judgment. And the doctor must not only exercise such judgment, he must do it fast. Typically, he has to act now. He's not like a lawyer that can petition the court or his client or any employer for a postponement. He faces daily, hourly, the merciless timetable of nature itself. Now, this is the kind of group and the kind of function that the government is proposing to take over. And after we have our break, I'm going to tell you how they think they can take over. How does anybody think that this kind of mental, delicate, excruciatingly complex thinking process can take place under the function of the government's control? And we're going to discuss that question right after this break. It's 2:36. My name is Leonard Peikoff, and our subject today, bureaucrats versus your doctor's brain. I want to look now to this question of what happens when you try to enslave the providers of a service such as medical care. Now, why do I say enslave? I start from the premise, which I just remind you of, we've had whole shows on this, that health care is not a right. Rights in the American tradition are rights to action that you can take, and to the consequences, the results, the products of those actions. You are not born, according to the American tradition, with rights to the products or services of others. They have liberty, they have property rights, their bodies, their minds, their property, their actions belong to them. And if you want and have a claim on them, you have to earn what you want by trading with them, by paying for it, by offering them something in exchange. And if you therefore say you're born not only with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, but also with the right to a vacation in Florida, the people who own homes in Florida don't have a right, or hotels in Florida. If you're born with a right to health care, the people who provide it have no right to decide what to do with their time and lives. It's true, and that's why I use the term enslavement. With any good and service that is provided by some specific group of men, if you try to make its possession by everybody a right, you thereby enslave the providers of the service. And that in turn wrecks the service and ends up depriving the very consumers that you are supposed to be helping. This works with anything. I've shown you in past shows, I think a couple months ago, how it would work if we did it with haircuts. And the same thing is applicable to medical care. If you call medical care a right, that simply means the doctors have no rights to live and function as they choose. They've got to hand over, turn over, deliver their services as and when somebody decrees. And that will simply destroy the quality of medical care in this country, as socialized medicine has done around the world, wherever it has been tried, including Canada. Let me say I was born in Canada, and I know a bit about that horrendous system firsthand. Now, before I get launched, I see we have a call here from Pat on line 7. So, Pat, welcome to the Leonard Peikoff Show. What's on your mind today?
I'll mention about the doctors. I mean, I can't stand the picky ones. I look for one that's not picky, But what I really called you about, I was in shock when I had a rented car for 8 days. The insurance pays about half, but you pay all of the taxes. Do you pay for evening wear when you rent the evening wear? I mean, I can't get over this, Leonard. I mean, I think this is so lousy that you have to pay taxes.
On your car rental?
Yeah.
Well, we're reaching the point where you got to pay taxes to breathe. Pretty soon you're going to get out of bed in the morning and there's going to be a wake-up tax, and then there'll be a breakfast tax, and then there's going to be a lunch tax, and then pretty soon they'll just drop the system altogether. You just give everything you own to the government, and they give you back what they think you need. That's called communism.
I'm very picky myself about it. I mean, I choose,
Would you like to have a system where the government tells you what doctor to have and what treatment he can give you?
No, I find that the individuality of the doctor is very important, and that's who I go to.
Is crucial, but do you think you're going to be able to do it for long with the way these bills are passing the Senate right now?
Well, I don't know, but, I think that people are really on the heels of that Senate. I mean, I think people are really complaining more than we know, or some of us don't bother to. We think it's no use. But I don't know. I think something's afoot.
Well, I hope so, Pat, and if you stay tuned in a little while, I'm going to tell you what I think the Senate is going to be doing to the medical profession very soon. Thanks for your call. I appreciate your call. We're going to take this break now for a message, and then when we come back, we will discuss bureaucrats versus your doctor's brain. It's 2:43. My name is Leonard Peikoff, and our subject today, bureaucrats versus your doctor's brain. I think the crucial issue here is to clarify the point about why government control of medicine means enslaving and therefore wrecking the doctors. And I wrote an article a few years ago called Medicine, the Death of a Profession, in which I predicted the destruction of the whole profession of medicine as a result of what was going on in Washington. And I'd like to quote you a brief passage from it. If you don't want the whole article, it's available in a book in the stores called The Voice of Reason. This is what I had to say on this crucial point. In medicine, above all, the mind must be left free. Medical treatment involves countless variables and options that must be taken into account, weighed, and summed up by the doctor's mind and subconscious. Your life as a patient depends on the private inner essence of the doctor's function. It depends on the input that enters his brain and on the processing such input receives from him. What is being thrust now into the equation? In the old days, before government, it used to be only objective medical facts. He would take account of this symptom, that symptom, and then he'd try to put it together and say, it looks like this disease, it looks like this syndrome, I'm going to try a bit of this, I'll take this test, and so on. That was complicated enough. But today, with the introduction of all of these massive managers in Washington and elsewhere, this is the kind of thing that has to enter his brain. Now, I got this from all kinds of doctors, and I just put it together into one imaginary monologue, but this is in fact what goes on. The administrator, the doctor thinks, now that could be the HMO manager trying to cut costs. First the government inflated all the costs through Medicare and poured all the money into it, and then the costs went completely out of control, so now they've introduced managers, or HMO type, which are allegedly private, which are really only government-created, seemingly private, with managers trying to control costs. So the managers are installed in hospitals or in insurance companies or working right out of the government. In any event, having driven prices through the roof, the government is now rearranging to have managed health care. And there's always an administrator, a third party, standing there behind the doctor and the patient. The patient has no say over what he gets, what treatment he gets, and increasingly the doctor has no say. And here's a typical thought. The administrator, will raise hell if I operate. But the malpractice attorney will have a field day if I don't. So right away, he's got a conflict that has nothing to do with the patient. He's got an administrator trying to save money and saying, don't operate, and against that, a malpractice attorney saying, aha, he didn't operate, he didn't give my client everything possible. And then in addition, my rival down the street, who heads the local PRO, peer review organization, they don't trust doctors to function independently anymore. All of their outlays, or most of them, many of them have to be approved, their procedures, by peer reviews. And so you've got to kowtow to some board that second guesses you. And let's say the peer review favors a high-class x-ray called a CAT scan in these cases. You can't afford to antagonize them. But on the other hand, there's the CON boys, that's the certificate of need boys, who don't like CAT scanners because they're too expensive, and so they have strict rules against them in many hospitals. So we've got a committee that tells the doctor you got to use this CAT scanner, and a government agency that says you can't have one, and an administrator that says you can't operate, and a malpractice attorney